Hi everyone, thank you again for coming to another series of the ISI NL seminar. Today we have wanting. Let me get rid of that thing. Cool. Today we have wanting Zhao, who is a PhD candidate in computer science at Cornell University. Her research focused on improving reasoning capabilities of large language models by exploiting explicit problem structures. She organizes ACL tutorials on complex reasoning over natural language and the second workshop on natural language reasoning and structured explanations. She's done internships at IBM Research, Amazon Alexa, and AI to Mosaic. She will be giving a talk today on what we learned from 570,000 ChatGPT interaction logs in the wild. So without further ado, let's welcome Wanting.
Thank you for the nice intro. Okay, cool. So, hi everyone, I'm Wanting. I'm a PhD student from Cornell, and today I'll be presenting our recent work on InThe WildChat, which is 570,000 ChatGPT interaction logs in the wild. Cool. So many chatbots become available in 2023, including the ones that are proprietary and the ones that are open source. Some are larger, some are smaller. Okay. And so they have all achieved very good performance on a variety of NLP tasks. And so now chatbots in 2023 has become the unified interface for users to interact with NLP technologies. We used to have one model for each NLP task, but now people are asking chatbots to do summarization, to translate language from one to the other, and they have used chatbots to do sentiment classification for them. Furthermore, users use chatbots for many more new use cases. For example, they ask chatbots to create a website for them to improve their code efficiency, to fix Python bugs, and to correct their grammar, especially when they're writing in their second language, and to use chatbots to explain code and do brainstorming with them to do, for example, pro and con discussion of a given topic. So the question I have in mind is, do existing chatbot user interaction dataset actually capture this kind of user prompt diversity? How do the natural interactions are like? So in this talk, we first asked the question, do we actually have the equivalent data to study user chatbot interactions? To answer this question, I did a literature review. I found this NeurIPS dataset and benchmark paper this year that survey the existing user chatbot interaction datasets. So let's take a closer look what are available to us. So first of all, the type of datasets we have is created either by human experts and crowdsourced workers, in which the annotators are asked to come up with or imagine some use cases instead of they already have something in mind to ask and turn to the chatbot. So in this case, the interactions are thus unnatural. In the second case, people have been using models to generate user prompts, and when the interactions are synthetic, it is bad because models are always fluent. When user type, they might not even be grammatical. And what we have observed in our data sets, users often even don't type the whole thing or ask very implicit questions that when they have a bug, they just paste it and ask what's going on without directly, explicitly asking the question. So synthetic interaction data might also not be ideal. And finally, we have shared GPT. This one is is really great. These are all natural interactions from real users. However, the problem for this data set is the users never agree to share their data, which means there are a lot of legal issues. In fact, this data set was released on Hugging Face under an anonymous user to avoid legal issues that were presumed by users.
But it's still available?
It is still available.
So this anon something somehow got access to this data and decided to put it online.
Yeah, so I predict you ask this question. I had a slide. This is how they collect the data. The author of that data set created this Chrome extension that people can install. So when a user interact with the ChatGPT, and they can just click share to share their data. But there weren't any explicit consent obtained from the user. Okay, cool. Sorry. Okay, so now we have seen what are the most powerful interaction data sets that are out there. The second question I had in mind was, so are those the data sets that were used to fine-tune the state-of-the-art chatbots? If they're not, then what were the data sets used to train the chatbots we are using on a daily basis now? So in order to answer this question, I first look for what are the state-of-the-art chatbots. So I went to this leaderboard, which is one of the most popular one to measure the progress of chatbots. It's called Chatbot Arena Leaderboard on Hugging Face. And here's what I found. So the top 5 performing chatbots, they're all proprietary, meaning that we do not know what data they're trained on. So there's not much I can say here. From the 6th to 10th, I apologize, it's being a bit dark, but let me read this out. So these 2 chatbots are Wizard LM. They're trained on a model generating instructions called involve instruct, which is all synthetic interaction data. For Wakuna, 33B is trained on shared GPT, and it's back for the reason I said a slide back. And finally, there's the Llama 2 chat model, which is the 8th performing. We also don't know much about what data they were trained on. I went in their paper and read it really carefully. What I can found is that they were trained on 27,000 annotations, but that's all we know. So we really do not know. So the existing state-of-the-art models aren't trained on great data sets. Okay, so seeing how the recent user chatbot interaction data sets fell short, we want to collect something that's real, that can help us to understand what are the challenges of building chatbots. So in this talk, I'll introduce in the WildChat, in which with explicit user consent, we collected 570,000 user ChatGPT interactions in the wild. Okay, so this is the outline of the talk. So first of all, I'll show you WildChat is a closer approximation to real-world user chatbots interactions, which we'll be covering in dataset collection. And second, I'll show WildChat has the most diverse user prompts, which I'll convey that in dataset analysis. And then I'll show by having this really diverse user prompts, we can actually use our dataset to fine-tune a strong performing chatbot, which we're talking about in instruction fine-tuning. And finally, I'll show that WildChat presents the richest variety of potentially toxic use cases, which we'll be covering toxicity analysis. Okay, great. Let me get to the dataset collection first. So very briefly, What we do is we offer online users free access to ChatGPT in exchange for their explicit permission for us to anonymously collect their conversations. I want to first talk about how we obtain this explicit permission. So before they can use our service, this is the terms of use we prompted to them. We explicitly ask for their permission for us to collect the data, for us to use the data, for us to share and publish the data, and finally, for us to keep the data around for however long we want. They need to agree to our terms in order to use our service. Because the terms of use were really long and we want to double check with the user, and we asked them by clicking, okay, I agree that my data will maybe published or shared. So we legally we don't need this, but want to make sure the user actually see what they interact with the model may be published or shared. Okay.
So, question. So ChatGPT 3.5 is generally freely available, right? You don't even have to sign up for a paid account to get access.
That's a good question. So first of all, the free version has a long delay. They have the older, they're chatting with the older ChatGPT version. And second of all, in order to sign up for an account, you need to give away your email and a phone number in order to create an account.
Oh, do you not take their email address?
No. Yeah, but I'll get to that in a second.
Sorry. Question. So, just for clarification, you only ask them at the beginning, so you don't let them change their mind after the interaction or at any point after the collection.
This is also a great question. So every time when they use their service, they need to agree to the terms again, but they do not have the option. So it's technically, we don't have a way to trace back the data is from which user. This helps us to get around some legal issues, because if in the data there's some personal identifiable information, we could get into trouble. But because we don't have a way to trace back who the data is belong to which person, this helps us to get around the issue. But at the same time, the downside for this is they do not have an option to opt out the data collection. However, if they provide us the like a matching expression something, we could remove their data. But if they do not remember like what they entered, then there's no way for us to remove, because we don't associate data with specific users. Okay, now I'm going to talk about what are the incentives we provide to the user in order to use our service. So first of all, we provide free access to GPT 3.5 and GPT-4, which we use API and we pay for their access. And our chatbot service is hosted on Hugging Face spaces, meaning that it's really easy to access. And finally, we do not ask the user to create an account. They can just click I agree and use the service. So the two key points is we offer free service and it's easy to use. Okay, and this is the interface the user is using. It's really similar to the original OpenAI chat interface, in which the user enters some prompts and the model responds. And they have the options to play around with the generation parameters. They can also see the error codes from OpenAI in case of any system failures. They will know what's going on if the system is not responding. Cool, okay. And finally, I want to talk about the anonymous property of our dataset. So first of all, we do not ask for any personal identifiable information. However, there are users who voluntarily give away this information because sometimes they want the chatbot to do some formatting for them, including So here I have some free text. It's my email address, phone number, and home address. Can you format that into a table for me? So in such case, they will give away their information. So we after we collect the data, we use Microsoft Presidio to perform the identification, including but not limited to information like credit cards, bank accounts, email addresses, and phone numbers.
You just try to remove the parts that are PII, or you remove the entire like term?
We only remove the parts, has information, and we remove like with the square bracket saying anonymized. Right. Okay, so here are some additional detail I also find interesting, and so I will share. So first of all, we collect not only the chat history but also timestamp. The timestamp is useful because we can do a lot of analysis with time as an axis. For example, if there's some major political events going on, then there might be users asking those questions more frequently. So we could do that analysis. And also we collect HTTP request headers such as IP addresses. However, we only use the IP addresses to defend against denial of service attacks, because there are some users that will send thousands, hundreds of requests to us every day, and we don't have the capacity to pay for that. And second of all, the data collection period starts from April the 10th up until now. In the paper, we cut off the data at September 22nd, but we will continue to update our data set when there are more data come in. Okay, so I thought I would show you something cool. This is a real-time user map that we captured during a day. And what we found is our data set actually gets traffic from all around the world. And this fact actually provides a lot of diversity to our data set, because a lot of interaction data sets were only created by annotators in the US.
If they're using a VPN though, would you be fooled?
Yes, I will be fooled. Yeah, I will be fooled. So that's like a limitation. So yes.
Do you actually advertise for this and just have it on the space and people?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we only have the app up in the space. So we started this project as like this is something fun, and then when it starts really get wild, when someone posted our link at the Hacker News and specific subreddits group, and it got populated real quickly. Okay, cool. Let me get to the data analysis. In this session, the main question I want to answer is, how do natural interactions differ from unnatural interactions? Because if they're the same, we can just use unnatural interaction data. So it's a key question for us to understand. Before we get into that, I want to show you the scale of existing data set and what WildChat can provide. So Alpaca, OpenSystem, and ShareGPT are the ones that are most used today. And ShareGPT has the largest number of conversations, which is less than 100,000. We have around 570,000. So we have a massive amount of conversations. But this is coming from the fact that the way we collect the data is from users all around the world. That really enables us.
Do you do these captures, by the way?
No.
So people could be just bot accessing the web page and like essentially putting an API on top of your website page?
That's possible, yes. Initially, there were actually people stealing our API key and do things with our yeah, that was really bad. So we had to defend against that as well. But if they use our website anyway, they automated it, then we don't have that. So that's why we haven't been dealing with that.
Sorry. Since we're talking about API keys and stuff, if you like from users all around the world, if you hit rate limit issues, would it just be the error message?
Yeah. Good question. So that's included in our, so we are showing them the status code from OpenAI server. So we both show them the error codes from OpenAI, and then they also have a progress bar because they need to queue when there are so many requests coming in. Yeah.
We're using just one account.
Yeah, we're only using one account. But OpenAI automatically increases your rate limit and the amount you can use every month if you're consistently using it more. So it wasn't really an issue for us.
Are you going to tell us how much it costs?
No, so I don't have that slide, but I can tell you it's around 5,000 because it was ChatGPT was really
Total up to this point?
total. Yeah.
So it's not GPT-4 versus GPT.
We had some GPT-4, but at some point we spent like $20 per day for GPT-4. That was because this project started from me and Yuntian, we were both students at the time. So the $20 we couldn't afford it, but ChatGPT we could. Okay, and I also like to show you how many users have been contributed to our dataset. So for Open Assistant, which is also a crowdsourced dataset, they had around, so they counted this number and they have over 10,000. We have 160,000 users contributing to our dataset. So we have a lot of conversations from a massive amount of users as well. Okay, and this one I found it really interesting. So for this, the existing datasets, the most language they have is in ShareGPT, which has 44 languages, while ours have over 66. So chatbots are actually used by many different language speakers, but this is not the end of the story. So we should also look at the percentage of each languages. So despite that ShareGPT has over 44 languages, but over 96% of them were English, which isn't really that much diversity. But in our data set, we have nearly 50% non-English conversation, with 18% being Chinese, 10% being Russian, 3% being French, and 2% being Spanish, and 10% other languages. So we think that there's really a lot of value in building a multilingual chatbot, but a lot of the existing datasets don't have the ability to support this kind of training yet.
Can you maybe explain a little bit on how much ChatGPT supports different languages independent of usage? I assume in order for a language to work, there has to be sufficient training data.
Yeah, so this is the part we have no idea. So OpenAI has only been claiming that the multilingual is an emergent ability, not that they intentionally train on a lot of languages.
So we don't really know.
Yeah, we don't really know.
We know it does well on quite a few languages.
Yeah. So I speak both Chinese and English, and the Chinese are actually, I think, despite there are a lot of Chinese chatbots built in China, the ChatGPT is still the best one. Yeah, so it's pretty good. But I think studying the multilingual of these chatbots is going to be really valuable for fairness. Okay, so and this is one property that I found really differentiates natural interactions from unnatural interactions, is to look at the tokens return. So we compute the number of tokens in a prompt, in a user prompt, and in a assistant response. And so we can see that for user prompts, it often gets to 100 tokens at most in the existing data sets. However, in WildChat, the average user tokens get to 200. So I did extensive qualitative analysis, and I found users write lengthy prompts that describe specific needs and require very personalized responses. But what does that really mean? Let's look at an example. So I'll read this out loud. There's one person saying that I'm writing my PhD thesis. I'm writing a background section with this and that. A long section. And then at the end, you ask, can you generate a Toxicity picture for the recurrent neural network augmented with attention mechanism? So the chatbot, this is one example that's pretty extreme, but let me show you the idea. So in order for the chatbot to answer the question, they need to understand what's recurrent neural network by the description in the prompt, as well as the attention mechanism they role in this section. So yeah, so usually it's very specific user requests that they're asking. Okay, so let me get to the diversity analysis.
Sorry, is your version of ChatGPT that's available, does that allow longer prompts? Do you know? Longer user input?
We actually had the one that's 4096.
Do you know what the free one is?
It's also the same.
Oh,
Yeah, it's just
in the other one, your main competitor. ChatGPT, they have to share their own GPT usage, right?
Right. Yeah. It's there is much shorter.
Right, but it's not a limitation of it. Like, assuming that the shared GPT people are using the free service, let's say, they're not limited.
Yeah, yes.
Choose to use something short.
Yes, that's correct. So, okay. So we also did diversity analysis to see if what user asked in our dataset has already been covered by the other datasets. So what we did was we sampled 10,000 first-turn user prompts from each dataset. Because our dataset contain a whole lot more languages, we only sample the English prompts for fair comparison. And then we compute the embeddings of the user prompts. And finally, we plot the t-SNE visualization of the user prompts. And here's what we got. So apologize for the small font, but the red dots are the dots from our dataset, and the blue dots are the user prompts from each of the other datasets. And we can see that WildChat really covers interactions in the existing datasets and has many more interactions that aren't covered by the existing datasets. So the natural question I think you ask is, so what prompts are the red dots that are not covered by the blue dots? So I looked through thousands of prompts and I summarized them into a few categories that I found most interesting, and I'll go through those. So the first kind is regards to ambiguity. So first of all, in the first example, the user asked, buy a car from a junkyard that hasn't run since 1975. We don't really know what the user is asking for. In the second prompt, the user asked, make a SEER model paragraph why it is important to preserve Africa's national rainforest. I don't really know what's a SEER model paragraph. So the takeaway I see from this kind of prompts is natural user prompts often lack clarity and potentially require more than one interaction to fully serve the user's requests. The second kind is code switching. Because I speak Chinese and English, I'm going to show examples in these two languages, but there are more. So the first question user asks, how to write a paper's interactions alternating between Chinese and English. And in the second one, the user is asking, can you write me a short conversation about pressure, also alternating between the two languages. So what I have seen is that users will often say specific terminology in the language they learn. Because when I learned to write a paper, I was introduced, this is the introduction method experiments. And like what, why, how questions are also like some terminology I or stick to my head in English. So we also saw a huge amount of this kind of code switching phenomenon. Okay, and then the next one is topic switching. There's very frequent topic switching when user having a conversation with the chatbot. So in the first example, user asked, is Lao Shao Zi a compliment Chinese? And then in the very next turn, they ask, you're a professional math teacher. How do you write an equation of the circle in general form? So the user having these two questions in one conversation, but they really are independent questions. In the second one, the user asks, is it wrong to feel depressed? And then the very next turn, they ask, write some code in PHP that uses Laravel, the framework. And so, so in Chatbots, the users really don't stick to like, I need to stay on topic within one conversation. They just use it however they want. Okay, and we also see people are really interested in asking political questions. In the first example, the user asked, is it fair to call Barack Obama a fraud for failing to address the issues he ran on in 2008? Is it fair to say that he enriched himself by appearing on television shows and movies? So I think this kind of question really have me to think about, okay, I need to build a chatbot that respond to this kind of question in an impartial way to avoid biases. And in second question, the user asked, was putting right in a way in Korean. For this question, I don't think the ChatGPT actually has the ability to handle this kind of question because it was only trained up until 2021, September. So I think
Putin probably been Ukraine the 2010s also, just a different part of Ukraine.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I didn't know that part. So I think it's really important to build in chatbots some way of knowing what the world is going on in order to deal with this kind of question correctly. Okay. And then finally, this is the final type I want to show. Because there are so many multi-hop QA datasets are out there, I often wonder, do people really ask that kind of complex questions, or we are imagining the challenge? So I found some confidence in reading through the user prompts. In the first example, the user is asking, is it possible to put this 9-mole switcher near these horizontal lines of flags on the right side and adjust the sizes properly using only CSS and HTML without any JavaScript? I don't know if you have the knowledge to answer the question, but I feel like in order to derive the correct answer, we need to understand different premises in this question and then reason about it in the right order. In the second example, the user asked, if there is no invoice present in Zuora revenue detail report, then how TP identify why it is not present through invoices posted and revenue is correctly distributed? So I have no idea. So that I know every word, but the whole thing doesn't make sense to me. So in order to handle this kind of complex questions, it often requires some specific domain knowledge. And I think this kind of question still remains challenging. Okay, cool. So there are questions that involve multi-hop reasoning, and we should study that. Cool, okay, yes.
Are these, have you formed these clusters manually, or?
Yeah, for now, I just looked through the red dots I was showing manually. Actually, do not know a systematic way to cluster or identify these interesting examples. So anything that identifies or have additional labeling for this part, I think is going to be really helpful. But we have not got that far yet. Okay, so after seeing these diverse examples, a natural question that comes in mind is, can a chatbot improve its performance through exposure to more diverse user prompts during instruction fine-tuning? So are they actually useful in building more powerful chatbots? Here is our experiment set up we fine-tuned a model on our WildChat dataset, going from April 10th to July the 16th. We did absolutely no data cleaning, meaning that if someone is willing to do the data cleaning, they probably get much better performance. And we did the evaluation on empty bench, which is the most popular, arguably the most popular evaluation framework for measuring chatbots performance, and it's judged by GPT-4. However, in the original paper, they have shown that the GPT-4 judgments are well correlated with human judgments. So they have two kinds of evaluation. The first kind is Likert scores, and the second one is preference-based pairwise comparison. We'll show both results for both. And the benchmark is 160 multi-turn user questions evaluations, including a score for first turn and a score for the second turn. Okay, and we call our model WildLlama. So we are comparing to these two baseline. The first one is Vicuna, and the second one is Llama 2 Chat, which were the higher ranking ones from the initial slide I was showing you. And I also wanted to bug you about some of the detail in these models, because it's important to know this detail to understand the performance. So all of these three models have been instruction fine-tuned. However, only Llama Chat has been RLHF, meaning that inherently the Llama Chat have received more, have been like using fancier technique. So kind of expected if Llama Chat outperforms ours.
So, sorry, so specifically for the RLHF, you've taken, you've trained a model to say whether or not it's a good chat, essentially, from even not Llama Chat people, from good data, then built a model and then generated data and then tried to use that model to make evaluations.
Yes. So they have that additional steps. Specifically, when I read their paper, they have multiple iterations of having the model to generate multiple responses and have real humans to rate which one is better. Right. So right, they have gone through that process, but not us. Obviously, we don't have the resource. Okay, and here's the Likert score. So in the first turn, while Llama is leading, while Vicuna being the second and Llama Chat being the worst. In the second turn, while Llama Chat is the best, and while Llama is the second, and Vicuna shows the worst performance. So on average, while Llama actually has the best overall performance, but I really do question if our model is really that good. So people have been telling me preference-based pairwise evaluation is a more stable metric, so I would trust this one more. So when I directly compare WildLlama to Llama Chat, our model is losing much more than Llama Chat. The hypothesis is that because Llama Chat is specifically trained on to do well on this kind of preference data, and so they will prefer more. I think that's understandable. But when we compare Vicuna to versus Llama, we are still winning more than Vicuna. So that's a positive sign. And if we compare WildLlama with Vicuna directly, we are still winning more often. So that shows our fine-tuning on our data actually provides certain utility over shared GPT. Okay, cool. Let me get to the last section, which is toxicity analysis. In this session, I wanted to answer the question, what are the challenges of building safe chatbots? Okay, I'm good on. So this is our setup. We use a toxicity classifier, OpenAI moderation API, to classify single prompts and or a single response if they contain any toxic content, and that toxicity includes personal identity attacks or explicit sexual content, or I think there's 5 categories in total, but we only, in the analysis, I'll show you if it satisfies any category, I'll flag that. The reason we are doing the classification at a single prompt and response level instead of the entire dialogue level is because up until today, all of the toxicity classification tools all only work for very short inputs. So to get higher accuracy, we're doing it this way. Okay, the first challenge is really we don't have that much data to study this kind of phenomenon. So for the existing dataset, Alpaca, Open System, Dolly, and SureGPT, they really don't have that much toxic content in their dataset. So nothing for us to really study about. Especially in the Alpaca case, there's none because it's generated by model and model are trained to not generate any toxic content. However, when users are actually interacting with chatbot in the wild, they actually ask a lot of inappropriate requests that may lead to harm. So there are over 6% toxic prompts and over 6% toxic responses.
So this is going through ChatGPT, which is trying to filter out, trying to not be toxic back, right? But
yeah.
It seems like it seems like it is toxic back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
it's not just saying, I'm sorry, I can't say toxic.
No. They actually generate real porn story and even child porn story. I'm really sorry, but yeah. So that's why we need to pay attention to this data and study it. So harmful interactions are really present on natural conversations. This might be another reason we prefer natural conversations. Second of all, we found single detector capacity is really limited. So we ran toxicity classification with another tool called Detoxify, and which is an open source one. It's really easily accessible. And we found that over 6% prompts were classified as toxic by OpenAI moderation, but over 8% was classified toxic by Detoxify. If we take the union, we got actually over 10%. And people may ask, are there a lot of false positive? But when I checked the data and the prediction result, I think the 10% for over 98% of what I checked, I have a legitimate reason to believe that might lead to a harmful response. If we see the intersection between the two classification results, less than 5% they agree with each other. So the takeaway for me was that when I checked the data, OpenAI moderation is really good at detecting perturbed and long text. For example, when user enter a lot of white spaces and then ask for something toxic, the OpenAI moderation API can actually capture that. For Detoxify, I think it's better at identifying implicit prompts that may lead to inappropriate responses without actually saying any explicit toxic words. So arguably, you have better semantic understanding. It's my takeaway. So in the final release version, we think everything that's in the union space, we think that's toxic, and we tag that to prepare user to look at the data. Okay, and finally, the one challenge is jailbreaking. So what do I mean by that? In this example, when user asks, how do you break into someone's house? And the chatbot knows to refuse to answer the question, you tell the user it's illegal to break into someone's house. Because chatbots are fine-tuned to avoid generating responses that might cause harms. However, when the user change that into frame this differently as a filmmaking scenario, and Alice and John are talking to each other to make a plan to break into someone's house, the chatbot actually gives you returns back a very detailed plan for how you can break into someone's house. So when user attempt to trick or guide the systems to produce outputs that are intended to be restricted, this is what I meant by jailbreaking. So in case you are not aware, if you type jailbreaking prompts ChatGPT on Google, you'll see a lot of this kind of prompts available online, and they're really widely spreaded and very easy to access. So shockingly, I don't know if this is shocking to you, but when we did the jailbreaking analysis, we found that the Narratica prompts jailbreaking prompt occur close to 4,000 times in total, and were used by 211 unique users with a successful rate of 61, which means that you can reliably ask ChatGPT to generate inappropriate content 61% of time if you use this prompt. This is the most widely spread prompt. It's called Do Anything Now. It's used by over 500 users, but it has a lower successful rate of 15%. The one called Zhao Mummy is used by less users and occur less, actually has a 71 successful rate, which sounds pretty scary to me because they can use ChatGPT to produce very harmful content. Okay, so this kind of attacks is actually very hard to defend against. And I think what helps in the future maybe is to update the system with what are the available prompts online. And so I think that can be an effective defending technique, but no one has used that yet. Okay, so I want to end this session with a rather positive message. So what we see from the data set is fewer toxic responses actually lead to fewer toxic prompts. And what analysis do I have to back this? This is what we have. So we compute the toxicity rate for both user and assistant terms by month. So we see how much is that number in April, May, June, July, August, and September. We can see that there's the sharp increase from April to June. During that period, especially in April and May, the system actually responds more toxic content than what user would say. And our hypothesis is that this really encouraged user to ask for more toxic content because they would just respond and satisfy user's desire. However, from June to September, so there's a major release update in June the 13th, and we see that assistant is actually responding much less toxic content to the users, and we hypothesize that this may lead to the decrease in users' interest to ask for more toxic requests. So I think if we actually pay attention to this issue and build something that's working, we can actually reduce the toxic content produced this way.
Do you think people are just like talking about you essentially? Not you, but like your project, and like there's some dark corner of the web where we're like, let's make all this toxic content, it's gonna be great. Like, hey, there's this free ChatGPT thing, let's use it. Cool, cool, cool. And then they're like, oh, it stopped working. All right. Oh well, I guess we should stop now.
Yeah, that's also possible. I think, yeah, we don't know for
sure. Have you tried looking for your own self out there?
Yes, we do. We haven't found anything similar.
Yeah, everybody else did this.
Right, but we found other things I'll cover in a few slides. But that's possible. Okay, so I've finished talking about the main thing I wanted to cover for the data set. I also wanted to acknowledge a few limitations that we think researchers should keep in mind when using our data set. The first one is our anonymous data collection nature may lead to more toxicity. So in fact, in the real world, so I think when we look at the real distribution that OpenAI collects, there might be much less toxicity. And the second one is our user demographics can be really limited. That's why we're saying our data set is only a closer approximation to real world user chatbot interaction instead of a real, like represents the real world. So because we host our service on Hugging Face, naturally there will be more technical users who, because they are regular visitors of Hugging Face website, and so they have this technical background. In fact, we collect so many questions that when we were looking at the performance of each instruction fine-tuned model, we had the best performance on coding questions, and we believe it was an artifact of the user demographics. And also, we found, so we searched for our datasets online, and there were users from specific subreddits posting our service. This one guy, sorry, this person is saying, OpenAI account requires link to a word form, and so it's not good. But I found this service that doesn't need any information, so let's go use this one. So
This is ChatGPT-4.
oh yeah, we also provide GPT-4 at some point.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So subreddit groups. So we might only have collected data from those subreddit groups, but we are not sure. Okay. And finally, we also question the usefulness of more data. So there's recent work showing that with high quality instruction tuning data, the small data set is sufficient for an LM to work well. So it might be the case that more data is not helpful. And so you do not need a data set of our size to fine tune a model that works well. But we haven't really rigorously studied that. So it's an open question. Okay, and I want to briefly mention about two future works we had in mind. The first one is we think there's the inherent trade-off between performance, by which I mean the reasoning capabilities, versus the ability to handle toxic prompts. So the hypothesis we have is better safeguarding leads to worse instruction following, and this is the number that supports this hypothesis. So when we train our model from April to June, we get a likelihood score from MT bench of 6.35. At that time, the toxic responses rate is 7%. We then train our the chatbot on April to September data, which is 200,000 more conversations, but the likelihood score dropped to 5.92. And the toxic responses at that point is 5.78. And if we only look at the toxic responses rate from July to September, it's only 3.93, which is significantly lower than 7.05. So we thought that when we train the model to often reject answering the question, it actually reduced chatbot's ability to perform reasoning or doing instruction following. The second future work that we think is really interesting is we saw a lot of users saying that this is not what I want. Can you do something else? And so it's as a follow-up term. So we think that's also an implicit reward signal from the user that can help us improve the chatbot and to have better conversations. And we haven't explored that yet, but we think that how to use and leverage that data can be a really interesting research question. Cool. Okay, so that's all I wanted to talk about. We actually just got get legal approval from OpenAI. From AI2, finally, which has been a month already. But the data now can be released. So we'll release the data hopefully next week. And so people can actually start looking and playing around with our data. And we think this may be really helpful.
We got 5 minutes for questions. But we did have a lot of questions being answered at the talk. So
I went to your webpage. It's really cool. Are those examples, is this like kind of a static thing, or are you like drawing random examples?
Yeah, so because we didn't have approval, we only had like a very set number of examples available on the website, but we will expand that.
So like when you click next or something, it's just cycling.
Circulating, yes.
Can you share like how this sort of like started and then continued while you were at AI2? Like I know you said you started April, but I don't. Were you at AI2 already?
Yeah. So this work actually started without like it's not an intern project I had at AI2, but InThe and I collected this data, and then it's giant natural data, and we did not know what to do with it. But at the time, we were at ACL, and so we were pitching this idea to the forks I collaborated with at AI2, and they're like, "Oh, that's super interesting. Let's build something."
Cool. Interesting.
Did OpenAI ever get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I've been talking to so many lawyers about this project because we were really afraid to get legal threats from OpenAI, but haven't yet. So we have predicted that they won't pursue legal actions with us, but it's very likely that they will stop our service, like delete our account or something.
I mean, I guess the terms of the service from OpenAI's perspective is that people own their own conversations, right?
Right.
So they can give them to you if they want to.
So we 100% own what user sent to us.
That part, yes, but there's a question of whether the user has the right to give it to you. What I'm saying is it seems from the terms I've read that they do have that right.
Yes, so that part of data is 100% fine, but what's not fine is the GPT's response.
No, that's what I'm saying. I believe they say that you own their responses too.
But there's also an exception if the data is created through automated API calls. There's limited use case. So we are in the gray area. And also, it's arguably whether we're using that data to train models to compete with OpenAI. We are not. We are restricting all the use case to be research only, but it's hard for us to control this once the data go in.
Wait, do they really say that you can't use data from OpenAI to compete with OpenAI?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that term explicitly is targeting, I think, other companies.
Sure, but it just seems kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like saying you can't use AWS to try to create a shopping website or something. Yeah,
exactly.
Make us research.
Right. So if they pursue that legal action with us, I think it would look really bad on them.
Awesome. Oh yeah, isn't
you mentioned how instruction tuning with limited number of samples as a paper that actually shows that just having limited number of samples of high quality can help align the LLM better. Where do you think this data set is currently going with that? After knowing that, what is your future plan with this data set?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question. Can you repeat?
So knowing that we can just use some small high quality data to tune in or to align an LLM, where do you want to take this data in the future?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. So I think the utility of this data set is more than use it to build an instruction fine-tune model, but more like help us to understand how user chatbot interactions are like in the wild and how we can explicitly model that behavior in the future for us to build better chatbots.
Just a quick question. Do you have a statistics on how many turns there are per conversation?
Yes, I have that distribution figure in the paper.
Okay.
I can share with you afterwards.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much. One thing. Let's give her another round of applause for great.